include quilt making. So Nancy has a master's in weaving, but then she began to make quilts. And because quilt making isn't, like, she couldn't, become part of a faculty for an MFA program and teach quilt making. It just wasn't done. So her program is essentially a low residency master's program.
Interesting.
And you go, it's how she structured it. And you go and you study with her, and then she gives you assignments, and then you go home and you do the work, and then you sign up for another class and you show up. And it's fluid. I mean, some people never graduate. Like, they continue to study with her because she's a genius. And then there are other people like myself that I really, because of the remoteness of where we live, the fact that I have 3 children, and they're still, although they're getting older and older, the youngest one will be in high school next year. I have only really had the opportunity to study with her when I've received some sort of funding. And I'm, grateful for that. The Rasmussen Foundation has funded my work on numerous occasions. So, this is a long way to say this. So I study with Nancy. I've been, doing my work, exhibiting, and then I'm like, oh, what is this modern quilt stuff going on? Like, I had not really seen that happening, and I wasn't plugged into social media. Like, my origins as a quilt maker happened before social media, so I didn't think of them as a resource. But the makers that came up at the time when the modern quilt, when the makers that started making quilts when social media, Flickr, blogging, all these sort of things were happening, those are the people that use YouTube. Those are the people that connected, and it's like a generation behind me in a way.
Right.
So a long answer to that is that I think books are really valid, but as someone who just took up knitting 3 years ago, I, of course, go to YouTube to figure out how to do a left decrease or whatever.
That's really interesting. Okay, so the book. So tell us about the book. How did you get from studying quilting, doing some exhibitions, to writing a book?
Well, and it's funny because people will be like, Maria, you're all over the place, and you just like exploded. And I'm like, well, not really. Like, this has been persistent. So I would say, in hindsight, that I studied with Lisa Call, and she is a quilt artist, textile artist, and she does a series of online classes that are excellent. The one I took with her first was working in a series, but then she also teaches a selection of art business courses. And I took, she calls it a master class, and that is a year-long class. And she has, it's set up in a particular way. I know there are other people that teach this sort of thing, but Lisa is the person I've studied with. And basically laying out, like, what do you need to do to be a professional artist, to be a professional quilt maker? And I just started doing those things. And there are gaps. Like, I don't send out an e-newsletter, which I should. But I'd say the biggest thing is that I started a blog. And I started my blog really after the heyday, after the pinnacle of blog. Blog popularity has decreased. So I started my blog in, I think, 2013. I think I started it the day before, like, New Year's Eve, because it had been a goal for me in 2012. So I did it on the very last day of 2012. That blog, I think, is the reason why, more than anything else, that I wrote a book, that people know my work, that I'm invited to teach and lecture, because the blog serves as a teaching tool. It also serves as a way for me to understand myself. If you have to write and articulate what a particular quilt is about, or your process for making it, and then share it with the world, that you learn a lot of things in the process of doing that. So I was writing this blog, and then Studio Art Quilt Association, which is I think of it as the professional organization for quilters. As if you're a professional quilt maker, you should look at that organization because they have a lot of resources and tools for you as a professional. So I was invited to give a keynote for their conference in Portland. And I'm trying to think of what year that was, 2014 maybe. And an editor for C&T Publishing was in the audience. So she started the conversation with me about writing a book. And that is sort of the progression. So as
you got more and more known, then the book came from that.
Yes. And I think following through on opportunities is crucial. Like if you say yes to something that you want to do, and a lot of times that saying yes and you following through and you properly documenting it is going to lead you to your next opportunity that you say yes to. And then you write about it on your blog and you follow through and you create this sort of people that are interested in what you're doing. And then it snowballs.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? It really does build. It's just like building one brick at a time, that you do stuff and that leads to other things and that leads to other things. It's kind of remarkable that that's the way it works.
It is, but you've got to make it a priority in your life. You have to be consistent. Yeah. And you have to treat it as a job. Like if you want, and I think you have to do that for about 10 years. Yeah. No, I know. Without there being any sort of financial reward.
Now, here's the question I have. So I've been doing this, so I do big projects all the time, but I've been doing this project for pretty aggressively since Thanksgiving, like no time off. Do you feel like I'm at a point where we didn't get everything done this week for the first time? Like didn't put up new ones, and I felt kind of guilty about it. But I also thought, like, do you feel like there's time when you do need to, like, do you plan vacation in your schedule? Or do you just feel like you have to work all of the time? Because I can't quite figure this part of it out, you know?
Yes, I do know. And last night, my husband and I were sitting down, and I said, I haven't taken a day off since we have a little cabin, an off-the-grid cabin in Wrangell St. Elias National Park. And we went there over spring break, which was the second week of March. And I said, I haven't had a day off since we drove to McCarthy. And that's kind of true. I work every day. People say, well, how do you do it, Maria? Well, I work every day and I don't do a lot of the things that other people do. I've made a decision to live my life this way because this is that important to me. And sometimes I think, oh, I really want a pedicure. I really want to just see my girlfriends, but that's not where I'm at right now. And I don't know, today this interview, I'm like, I don't have time for this interview. I have a quilt that was supposed to be in the mail yesterday.
Totally. I feel the same way all day long. Tell me a little bit, and I promise we'll get to the book, but tell me a little bit about your quilt project every day. Tell me a little bit about that.
About what?
Project Every Day. Are you still doing that? You did that for a while. Are you still doing Project Every Day? It was on your
website. So Project Every Day, when I turned 50, I'd been wanting to do this, and so I just sort of made it like what I gave myself this excuse. Like, you turn 50, what do you want to do for your 50th year? Well, I want to do this Project Every Day, which is essentially I wore only clothing that I had made.
Interesting.
For an entire year. And my youngest son was my documentarian. And so every day, and it took us a while to figure this out. So I actually we started in my driveway. He just took a photo. And then we realized that if I turned around, so he actually takes 70 photos of me sort of turning all the way around. And then we figured out, well, we got to put it in a good location, because once the snow melted, we realized we were actually doing the photo in a really bad location. So there was probably a week where we tried to figure out the best location. We live on about an acre on a dirt road on the south side of Anchorage. And so we found a good location. And so I had to start over. So that was about, I don't know. So I ended up like 450 days total. So we took the photo. There's some gaps because I was traveling a little bit. But basically for 450 days, every outfit that I wore, I made, my son photographed me, and I turned around. Now, the project is not done because the end thing I wanted to do is my son number 2, who's really good at video editing, is going to put those still photographs into a movie where I turn around every day. So I turn around.
That'll be great.
Behind me, the Alaska year goes by.
Wow, that'll be great.
So you see if I get it done. And then I know that I want to do some sort of fiber component, as in taking the leftover, the remnants from this clothing and making it into, I haven't figured it out. At one point I wanted to make 4 quilts that sort of represented the 4 seasons using the 4 different, like the fabrics that were left over.
Right.
But part of me thinks I want to make a quilt that has 365 like sort of paper dolls that are pieced out of fabric. So I haven't. Yeah.
That's craziness. I like it so much. That's great.
So that's that project. And part of it is I don't know how many quilt makers know that there's sort of this maker. There are a lot of people that are having this conversation about the clothing we wear and making our own clothing and sustainability, fast fashion. And there's actually a woman in Canada and a woman in Australia who both did similar projects. Now, they made their underwear and their shoes, and I did not do that.
That's insane.
But it is. But I feel like my documentation, the daily documentation, I don't think that had been done before.
That's really cool.
And there's Sonia Clark, I think, 100 dresses. She's based out of San Francisco. So there's people that are having this conversation about clothing and making and what you wear and body image and all these upcycling. And I just wanted to be part of that conversation in a small way. I think, my quilt making, is the real, that's my life work, is making quilts. But I also like to knit and make clothes too. And the whole thing.
That's really cool. Now, with the patterns that you got, did you do any affiliate linking with that, or did you just link to it so people could find the links easily?
Affiliate, you mean like
you
sponsorship
and
so?
Well, like you get a percentage of it when, like, if someone clicks on it, they're just links to you're not making any. Did you? You know what I'm saying? So like Amazon's got an affiliate linking program. It looks like you're just going to really interesting places for different patterns. Is that what's happening with the patterns? Where do the patterns come from, I guess?
So there's this whole indie pattern movement. Primarily women opening up their own small independent fabric, clothing pattern businesses. Yeah. And I tried to use their pattern. Yeah,
that's really cool.
And
I mean, that's part of what's so cool about this thing is you first of all, the clothes are awesome. They're amazing. You just look great in them. But then you're like, oh, I want to make that. So it's kind of amazing to watch. It inspired you to make them because you see that you did it and how cool they look, and that there are all these different pattern makers out there.
Yes, and when I started the project, it was super ridiculous. It's January 15th, which is my birthday, which is, like one of the coldest, darkest days possible in Alaska. And I had like 2 pairs of leggings and 3 shirts. Because I kept wanting to start the project with like this glamour wardrobe. Mm-hmm. And I realized it would never happen, that I had to just say, okay, from now on, you're only wearing what you've made. And if you only made 3 things, well, I guess you're wearing 3 things. And yeah, it was a fun project. It was definitely a fun project.
All right. So